Okay, so now I welcome you all to the second day of Mundial+10. Okay, we are going to start the third working session, Input to Ongoing Processes. This session will be moderated by Akinori Mayamura from HLAC. We also have Jorge Cancio, Jeanette Hoffman, and Jason Pielemeyer, also from HLAC. Okay, they are joining this session, and you are also joining this section. All right, so you can start, please.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Akinori Mayamura, as introduced, HLAC member, and then the moderator of this session. Slide, please. Okay, the working session number 3. Working session number 1 and number 2 are already done yesterday, and the HLAC is already under the finalization of the outcome document. But still, we need to do the working session 3, which is for input to the ongoing processes. Ongoing process part has the 4 sections of the Internet Governance Forum, Global Digital Compact, which is +20 review, and then other processes. So 4 sections, and then they are so concrete, and then the messages to these the other processes. So we divided this session to the several segments for each subsection, number 1 to number 4. So please have this in mind. And if you had your input offering to these sections, then please wait for the respective part of the subsection of this session. So then for the general and overarching comments, and WSIS +20 review and other processes are the first 2 subsections, which will be moderated by me. And after that, it's followed by the IGF subsection, which is moderated by the Janet, and then the GDC subsection to be moderated by Jorge, and other potential messages, which is not really for the particular subsection, which is which is to be done in other potential messages to be moderated by Jason, and then final remarks should be presented by Jason as a rapporteur. I think it is clear enough for you, and then let's move on to the substance. Then input to NETmundial based on the input from the consultation process. It is integrated by the HLAC, and then as you've seen, we have the draft outcome document, which was shared with you in advance. Now, this NETmundial+10 conference is for you to make the final input to influence the final outcome document. And then this input to the ongoing processes is, as I said, the section 1, 2, 3 are we had a discussion for the Internet governance processes, and then section 4 is for us to message the subsequent processes which will be held in the UN process, which are IGF and GDC and WSIS preview. So that's we discussed in this section 4. Then first, we'd like to go to the general and overarching comment. If you had, if you kindly offer your comment, please come up to the microphone, and then I will give you the floor, please. Starting with general and overarching comments. Okay, please. Hold on, please. Please show the PDF document for the reference for the audience. Please go ahead, Bertrand.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Bertrand Lachapelle. I'm the Executive Director of the Internet and Jurisdiction Policy Network and the Chief Vision Officer of the DataSphere Initiative. General remark, the NETmundial+10 event is a self-standing event. It is not just a consultation for external processes. We have our own messages. This community has strong messages to share. It is not just a part of the general process. It is a statement and an opportunity to make a statement. The second thing is, I was discussing with a few people in the last evening, and I realized that for the people who participated in NETmundial, the first one in 2014, but also, more importantly, the people who were in the WSIS 20 years ago almost, the reference to governance of digital issues was the default multi-stakeholder. Because what existed at the time was only the technical governance of the internet, and it had been from the onset a multi-stakeholder exercise. For the people who are coming today, this year and next year, the default is not the multi-stakeholder approach, because for most people who have discovered those issues in the last 10 years, what has happened was governmental regulation, because there were a few problems that had to be addressed. So the multi-stakeholder approach for most actors who are now in this environment is something that has to be explained and sold as a solution. It is not like it was in the past, a sort of natural expectation of the way things should be treated. We need to keep that in mind, because for us all who believe that it is a difficult way forward, but the right way forward, it has to be demonstrated. And finally, I just want to highlight at the beginning that NETmundial+10 is one event. It doesn't intend to be a process. Yet, for all of us, on the basis of what we're discussing here in those 2 days, the next year and a half, until the WSIS+20 review is completed, is going to be an extremely important period, particularly to not only strengthen, but restructure or improve the IGF and all its constituents to make it reach its full potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have the online comments? No? Okay, let's go to the academia, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Felipe Cabral. I speak from the academia. I am a PhD candidate conducting research at the Rio de Janeiro State University. Among other things, my research is related to the enforcement of rights online. And in that regard, I would like to comment on the item 4.4 of the document, when it says other processes, specifically on the second bullet point. The document highlights the importance of technology and trade and the correct balance between protecting intellectual property without compromising equitable access to technology and information. It also brings consideration of the social, economic, and environmental impacts of trade policies related to technology. This is an aspiration that we should endorse, of course, as the function of intellectual property is to promote invention and creative arts. However, the statement omits the essential point of the responsibility of the right holders to enforce and protect their rights or otherwise lose them. The statement also does not address a component of consumer protection that should be emphasized when it comes to technology and trade, and particularly the enforcement of rights online. Whenever we talk about barriers to the enforcement of rights, we talk about access to justice. And of course, it has a close relation to the equality principle that we all have been talking about during these sessions. In that regard, I suggest that we provide an additional wording to this specific paragraph regarding the data flow when it comes to technology and trade. This wording, for example, could be something like that. Further, such trade policies should not inhibit the flow of information that impairs the ability of right holders to enforce that right when such enforcement is necessary to protect people from fraud and abuse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Remote comment? No. Okay, let's go to the governmental part.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Brian Houts. I work for the Ministry of Economic Affairs in the Netherlands. Could you please show on the screen the principles number 11 when it comes to holding stakeholders accountable? So it's just above number 4. No?
Is it relevant for the section 4?
No. Just above section 4, you see principle number 11.
I'm curious that it is relevant for the discussion.
Well, it has been moving all about, so I was just referring to that. Can you please show it on the screen? It's going to be a long time. Okay, this seems not to be working. I will be back later.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Okay, going to the technical community, please.
Okay, Nicolas Fiumarelli from the Internet Society Uruguay chapter and the Internet Standard Security and Safety Dynamic Coalition. I have 1 minute or 2 minutes because it says 1 minute there. I have a lot to say. On the ongoing processes in the section that we should articulate more clearly, like how the IGF, with the dynamic coalitions, best practice forums, and policy networks, act as a crucial feeder to the broader digital governance frameworks. This involves not just the participation, but the active contribution to shaping these global digital policies, to the comprehensive session transcripts and outcomes. Also on strengthening the IGF through this more AI-driven multi-stakeholderism, we are proposing to include some specific languages saying on enhancing the operational capabilities of the IGF. This is integrating with unified tools for the national, sub-regional, regional, and the global bottom-up processes, including session transcripts as well, and avoiding manual reporting that we have nowadays. These tools will be more efficiently and also ensuring more comprehensive and inclusive policy shaping development. And this is also enabling to manage these local, regional, and global bottom-up stakeholder contributions.
We discussed the IGF in particular at a later moment. It's overarching points.
Overarching points.
Can you bring this up again when we discuss the IGF?
I will return.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Remote? No. Okay. I'd like to close for this subsection, please. Then go ahead to the academia, please.
Bom dia, meu nome é Alexandre Arns Gonzalez, eu vou falar em português.
Bom dia, good morning, I'm Alexandre Gonzalez, I'm going to speak Portuguese. I am a researcher and a volunteer of political sciences in the University of Brasilia, and my comment is the following: is going to propose what would be the statement of NETmundial+, and strengthening the decision-making, multi-stakeholder decision-making process. So we would have a statement focusing on strengthening IGF. And what do I mean? The strengthening of IGF would be part of the whole discussion of debating and discussing concentration of economic and political stakeholders. Because of large digital platforms, they have been progressively building up their power because they have a business model which will just bringing on the power to make decisions about the conditions of how other companies can develop their business and innovate, because there are millions of people that will just work, will be able to have income, and sometimes the platforms decide also how people are going to make their contributions, their inputs, and express their opinions. And I would say that the universities also are being impacted by the big tech. Sometimes they also have a say on what kind of research projects are conducted in the universities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, okay. The queue is closed for the general overarching comments. Is that okay? You are now on the queue for the next section?
No, I was.
No. All right, then I may squeeze it in, but maybe go ahead to the technical committee, please.
Hello, my name is Alexandre Boava. I'm from Brazil. I'm tech work of data and part of the homeless worker movement, working in your technology sector. Let me switch to Portuguese, after all, you're in Brazil.
This moment is bringing a very good discussion with interesting ideas, but we have to understand the world as it is, the world as it's being told. But what is the real world? The world we live is governed by corporations and nations. And the past 50 years, we had fewer corporations and one nation here, one nation there. What I would like to highlight the situation is that I have experienced in this event and may contribute to the improvement of multi-stakeholder approach. If multi-stakeholder approach is really an answer to think about internet with more inclusive policies. I was wondering whether I should be part of the civil society because I represent the homeless workers. And how can civil society really be represented or is represented by the civil society in terms of digital rights? So there is also some misunderstanding here and there. But I'm here speaking on part of the technical community. I'm also part of the technology area of this movement. We have data science, designers, educators working on technology to deal with concrete problems of the Brazilian society. Am I part of the technical community or not? Is there any technical community which is not fighting for specific interests? One way of improving multi-stakeholder approach is also to give visibility to the technical community. These are important questions in mind for this very special moment and conference we are experiencing.
Are you talking? Are you making an opinion for the technical committee? Technical committee. Okay, thank you very much. Then, okay, this queue, please.
Thank you very much, Sébastien Bachelet, Internet Society France and European Regional at-Large Organization, and on behalf of the civil society. It's on the overarching issue. At the beginning of the text, there is no reference to the review of the IGF mandate, and we are talking in 4.1 about IGF. It may be good to have it on the introduction. And as, if you allow me, I will go into IGF specific issue. Like that, I will not come back twice. We suggest to add the following text. As the financial resources needed to support participation of all stakeholders who are not able to self-finance, particularly those from the global majority. And the second suggested addition, there is a need, however, to improve the dialogue and continuity between different processes that deal with the internet and digital technologies governance as a mean to report the development of processes such as Global Digital Compact and other UN processes, OECD, the G20 Digital Economic Working Group, I-STAR Community, and other. And an improvement of the dialogue between global, regional, and national IGF it's also needed in a way that the discussion and agenda can feed back such processes, aiming at establishing a continuity between them from a local to a global perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Remote comments? No. Okay. Moving to the academia segment. Thank you.
Bom dia. Meu nome é Natan Pasqualini e aqui eu
Good morning. I'm Natan Pasqualini. I'm representing the University of Juiz de Fora. I'd like to go back to what was mentioned by the civil society comment when we talk about coordination relating to the governance of the internet or digital technologies. Two elements are key: continuity and dialogue. And I'm talking about different processes. In that regard, it's important that the agenda of regional and local IGFs are reflected in the global IGF, and also consensus, global consensus, that they can also go back to local and regional IGFs as a feedback. So we would have a process ensuring continuity and dialogue, part of a global perspective into local perspectives. It's also very important to improve the dialogue of IGF going beyond the UN processes, and that should be part of the global IGF. And we have different groups, the G20, and also of different presidents, not to mention what has been already discussed in other technical bodies. So if we ensure this continuity of process, IGF can also be strengthened as a hub that facilitates coordination of processes related to internet governance and other technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Remote comment? No, okay. It's the time is now entering into the next section of the WSIS plus 20. So the comments, it's better to be for the WSIS plus 20, but I will be flexible to making a queue if you really want to make a comment for this. Are you okay with that? Then, okay, go ahead with the private sector section.
Thank you. Mark Daresgaud, Internet Governance Consultant, but speaking more from my role as a counselor in ICANN's GNSO. When we consider all of these different processes, WSIS, IGF, whichever of them, very little of that ends up being reflected within the ICANN community. I can say in good faith that the decisions that are arrived at or the deliberations that happen there end up being fed back to the community. This past few years, there has been a sort of unilateral effort from ICANN to have an outreach session that brings together different positions and questions to us. But this effort is very much from ICANN staff, and it's a session that takes place every 2 or 3 ICANN meetings, very insufficient in that sense. What I feel is these different processes should be coming to ICANN to bring these outcomes to the community. As a technical community that's, multi-stakeholder, made up of very different backgrounds and people coming from different regions and causes, it would be extremely more useful if it was them approaching the community saying, hey, we have reached this and this conclusion, we have come to this general idea. It can be, small sessions, but this doesn't take place at all currently. As I'm sure, you can already form a member of the board. We have some here, many ICANN participants. We can say it's not like there has been that kind of outreach. So the real question is, it's not so much about whose burden is it, but when you reach a conclusion, you want to socialize it with relevant parties, maybe you should be bringing it to those parties. And right now, this is not taking place. So shouldn't we be making a call for this to be more recurrent, for this to be a part of the process, actually socializing with the ISTAR groups and so on? Thank you very much.
Can I say something? It would be good if you suggested concrete wording for the output document. So could you come back and propose something?
Thank you very much. Going to the civil society queue.
Hi, this is Carolina from the DNS Research Federation. I was queuing for IGF, and I also have comments for GDC. So I'm going to start off with my comments on IGF and try to fit the comment on GDC as well. On the IGF, you had a paragraph on what the IGF has done well. I'm with the DNS Research Federation. We recently published a report on the impact of the IGF since the last WSIS review. And one of the things that we found, while there's a lot of room for improvement, of course, is that the IGF has already been an effective space for Global South participation. And this is something that you see across the composition of the MAG in terms of the representation of national and regional IGFs across the Global South, youth participation and so forth. So I think when we are talking about, for instance, the Global Digital Compact, they're proposing, one of the sort of items on discussion is that they're trying to make that process inclusive for the Global South. And I think highlighting that aspect of the IGF is really important because it's really hard to build out a space that already, functions in terms of involving Global South. In terms of strengthening the IGF, you had a sentence about ensuring inclusive and diverse participation, which we've been hearing for years, and I think we need to be a bit more, elaborate a little bit more about what we mean by that, and sort of a few concrete suggestions there, which I had here in my notes, apologies, would be discussing issues that are relevant of Global South, paying adequate attention to sort of representation balance of all stakeholders and rotation of locations and locations that are safe for all participants. My time is up, so I'll skip the comment on GDC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me remind you, this segment is for the WSIS Plus 20 review and other processes. So please put the respect for the sub-segmentation. Please. Then go ahead to the governmental queue. Thank you.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate for me to make just specific changes to the IGF section at this point?
Yeah, I'd like to have it in the IGF section, which is starting on the 10:50.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Clear enough. Thank you very much. Okay, the civil society's queue, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Quinn McHugh with Article 19, representing civil society. And my comments actually pertain to Section 4.2 on the GDC. Is it appropriate to make now? Would you prefer to make it later? No.
Okay, later, please.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Technical committee, please.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I have a possible modification to the paragraph on the WSIS that says, instead of saying that the WSIS has served, we could say that the WSIS continue to be an essential platform for fostering cooperation among governments and the different sectors. These groups collectively address the digital challenges and opportunities for both technical and public policy issues in the digital governance. But we can also mention that as we approach the WSIS Plus 20 milestone, there is a pressing need for renewed commitment to digital inclusion and the human rights online. So the multi-stakeholder model remains crucial. We can say something about that. And the evolving mechanisms and cooperation mechanisms to address these key digital issues are expected to adapt to new technological frontiers. So we can also mention that as WSIS prepares to mark and move beyond its 20-year milestone, the integration of insights from the IGF, particularly from dynamic coalitions, best practice forums, and policy networks, but also the national and regional IGF initiatives, should be formalized within the WSIS process to ensure that these rich sources of innovation and expertise continue to inform and enhance more like the global or the digital governance strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governmental queue, please.
Thank you. Pierce O'Donoghue, European Commission. The European Commission and the EU member states participating welcome the existence of Chapter 4 as a whole as an important input to ongoing processes. Specifically in relation to the WSIS +20 review section, we would suggest the addition of a sentence at the end of this paragraph, which would read, taking this multi-stakeholder outcome document into account, the WSIS +20 review should further enhance inclusivity, transparency, and accountability of the Internet governance framework, and ensure that attention is paid to environmental sustainability and emerging technologies shaping the future Internet. Thank you. We will have comments in other sections later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Online, please.
So we have the Morita Mall asked to participate. So she's from the civil society. Morita, please join us.
Thank you. Marita Mall, I'm part of the ICANN at Large community and part of the Canadian and online end user community. I've also participated in WSIS +20 many years ago. This point that I want to make has come up before. It came up yesterday, and I think it's very important that it be included in the document. That with respect to WSIS +20, because this is a process that's moving on us very quickly, to ask the governments to take an initiative with respect to helping the civil society groups in their countries to put together comments that can be taken forward to WSIS +20. I have spoken or put together several sessions at ICANN where we spoke about the need for groups to work together in order to have any impact at all on multilateral processes. And with respect to civil society groups within countries, often small, unresourced, that is absolutely necessary that government enable or do something to enable that to happen so that those processes can reflect the ideas of the end users, civil society groups in their countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then, okay, private sector, please.
Thank you, Mark Darisgaard, bringing textual suggestion for the draft. So this would be starting now. Given the multiplication of processes in different internet-related spaces, it becomes necessary for outcomes and decisions to be communicated directly to policymaking communities, such as ICANN and the IETF, preferably in open and well-advertised sessions. These outreach efforts should be considered part of the successful wrapping up of the efforts from processes such as WSIS +20. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Technical committee queue, are you on the queue? No? Okay. Go ahead. Okay, this section is now, the queue is now closing for this section. Thank you for the understanding.
Hello everyone, my name is Dina, I'm from Internet Society Accessibility Standing Group. And just a commentary, to improve these challenges regarding to the WSIS +20, I believe that it's important to invest in digital education, infrastructure, and inclusive policies for global partnerships. So I believe that it will offer a valuable opportunity to assess progress and set goals for the future of the information society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, civil society, please.
Yes, so this is Carolina. So we are on 4.3, which is +20
yes.
review. So just a suggestion to add a line to explicitly support the mandate renewal of the IGF and the role of a strengthened IGF to deliver the WSIS and GDC principles.
Okay, thank you very much. Academia Q, please.
Thank you, Alison Gilwald. I want to make a general comment, then I'll go to some of the specifics, but I just wanted to re-emphasize some of the points made yesterday around emphasizing that multi-stakeholderism is not an end in itself, but is absolutely critical to achieving these other democratic and development growth outcomes. And because it's not in our front end, in our framing, I think it's not also coming through in this end document. So I would really urge us to bring those through. Specifically, I think we in the front, we had some discussion about the lack of discussions around equity and justice, not just inclusion in these processes. And I think that leads to some of the critique of the outcomes over the last 10 years that have been rights preserving in their intentions, that have been human-centric, etc., that have possibly been ethical, but have not actually produced social and economically just and equitable outcomes. And so I think this is really why in each of these sections we want to acknowledge the progress and failures that have been achieved in the IGF, in the WSIS processes, etc., so that we can be more strong in our proposing multilateralism as an essential solution to getting this to work. But I think we have to do that in very specific ways that speak about how we're going to deal with the inequities. So I think we can't just talk about the IGF needing to be strengthened without explaining some of the failures, some of the uneven distribution of opportunities and participation in the IGF, and how that will be rectified going forward. Where we use language like we may need to review, we may, MGF may need to, I think we need much stronger language. And throughout the WSIS process, which I think is a little more nuanced and deals with these broader global issues, I think it does take us back to the issue of, whether we're talking about internet governance or digital governance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm now now remote comments, please.
So we have a comment from Gianna Montenegro. The Global South need its own regional forum to discuss novel digital organization issues. Important issues such: 1. Inequality, 2. Lack of fair share in digital technologies, and 3. Lack of protection of human workers of the Global South in digital sphere. EGF is a global forum. The argument of duplicity cannot eliminate the creation of our own forums. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you very much for the comment. Technical committee, are you for the WSIS plus 20 comment? The next one, okay. Then civil society queue, please.
I'm also for the 4.4 other processes.
Okay, got it. Then do you have any other? Okay, now online, another online, please.
So Denise Leal, please, can you join us?
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Denise Leal from Brasilia University and also from the Youth Coalition on Internet Governance and also Youth like IGF. I wanted to call attention to a point that I think we are discussing a lot, which is multi-stakeholderism. We are talking a lot through the document and through this event, but how are we advocating and guaranteeing that IGF and WISES and other groups are advocating for multi-stakeholderism in all the United Nations spaces where we have internet-related discussions. Like we are now having this dialogue on digital sequence information on genetic resources and how it is managed on databases, and it's not a multilateral, multi-stakeholder discussion. It is a lot academic and governmental. So what I wanted to suggest is that we put in this document and to consider for other events and advocating spaces that IGF and WISES and other spaces need to develop a way to advocate for multi-stakeholderism in all the United Nations spaces where we have internet-related discussions. Thanks a lot. I am a youth representative, and I am very happy seeing youths during this event.
Thank you very much. This concludes this subsection for the WSIS plus 20 review and the overarching comments. We are now entering into the next subsection for the Internet Governance Forum, which will be moderated by Janet Hoffman. Janet, please.
Yes, now it's finally about the IGF. We realize that the various processes are a bit like communicating vessels. They are related to each other. But we thought that if we sub-segment the debate, we also create an opportunity for the people online and room to talk to each other about specific subsections of the text. And another remark I would like to make is that the more concrete your contribution, the more specifically it relates to parts of the draft document, the higher the chance that your comment contribution will actually reflect it, new version of the outcome document. And now we start here from our perspective to the left with the technical community. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, okay. Nicolas Fiomarelli from the Internet Society Uruguay chapter and Dynamic Coalition on Internet Standard Security and Safety. I don't have like specific modifications, but there are some words that are in the current document, so you can see where the modifications could be. So, in strengthening the IGF, we propose to include a specific language on enhancing operational capabilities of the IGF by integrating unified tools for national, youth, sub-regional, regional, and the global IGF, including human insights plus AI-driven processes that could help really to include session transcripts, processing, and avoid manual reporting. These tools will analyze inputs more efficiently, providing transparency, categorization per stakeholder, different demographics, with an accountable and transparent way of showing those. So this will ensure comprehensive and inclusive policy shaping development. The integration also will enable the IGF to manage these analyzed stakeholder contributions effectively, adapting to the evolving digital landscape. And on the part, the document doesn't mention nothing about the crucial work of the IGF dynamic coalitions, policy networks, and best practice forums. So by detailing their role in providing these specialized knowledge and innovative solutions, will be good. So we suggest to add maybe a subsection or something that outlines the need for these coalitions to have a direct impact on global policy discussions, particularly on cybersecurity and digital inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, government, please.
Thank you, Jeanette. Pierce O'Donoghue, European Commission. A quick comment to a suggestion from an online participant of civil society to the WSIS. We yesterday in the principles and guidance section suggested text with regard to the responsibility of government to facilitate autonomous and independent input of multi-stakeholders to the multilateral process. We think that those two ideas would tie in very nicely. On this section on the IGF, following the fifth paragraph on the evolution of the IGF, we feel that that needs to be strengthened and extended. So we would suggest a new text which reads, the IGF should also proactively address the challenges and opportunities presented by emerging technologies that shape the future of the internet and the digital ecosystem. This includes engaging not only experts with specific technological expertise, but also ensuring broad community participation to anticipate and prepare for future developments. Such anticipatory consideration will enable the IGF to remain at the forefront of guiding global internet governance in a dynamic technological landscape. And just very briefly, finally, we would like to add some language at the end of this section with regard to the importance of the multi-stakeholder process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, civil society, please.
Thank you. Paloma Lara Castro, representing Derechos Digitales. We have some comments and suggestions regarding IGF, specifically to strengthen the human rights-based approach and ensuring accessibility. So under section 4.1 on IGF, we recommend adding a reference to human rights in the framing paragraph. So the text would read, The Internet Governance Forum consists in its annual event, intersectional work in the form of dynamic coalitions, best practice forum, policy networks, parliamentary and judicial tracks, and national, regional, and youth initiatives. It strives to bring together all stakeholder groups from different parts of the world based on upholding human rights principles in internet governance. And then we also suggest an adding paragraph to that says, have a host country selection process that prioritizes inclusivity, accessibility, human rights, and equitable conditions for attendance and free and open participation by all participants, enabling the participation of historically excluded groups. This is an especially important point for us, considering the concerns that has been raised here and in other spaces regarding the limitations of participations in these spaces, specifically regarding countries that don't uphold human rights principles, which has resulted in the exclusion of groups such as women and LGBTQI communities. Thank you.
Do I get this right? You want the host country to start a selection process?
Yes, we want a selection process that contributes to selection processes of the countries that's going to host the IGF that upholds human rights principles within the country to ensure accessibility for people that usually cannot attend because of human rights constraints, specifically regarding, for example, LGBTQI communities.
Thank you very much. Now, there's nobody from academia who wants to contribute. Then we go back to the technical sector. Online, sorry. Yeah.
So we have a comment from Fahin Somro from civil society. How can digital governance processes adapt to changing geopolitical dynamics while ensuring fairness and inclusivity?
That was it? Okay. Now, technical sector, please.
Thank you. My name's Annalise Williams. I'm from the .au domain administration. My comments relate largely to the IGF, but I will also make a suggestion for an addition as well. So we heard quite a lot yesterday about the shortcomings of multilateral processes which weren't historically designed to consider multi-stakeholder input. And that does need to change, but change will take time. In the meantime, we should use what we have available to us, and that is the IGF. The NETmundial outcomes document mentions the IGF around 20 times. It foreshadows the IGF as the place to continue discussion about NETmundial principles and guidelines and process steps. It says the IGF should be renewed and strengthened. And in our message to the GDC, which I support, it says the IGF is the appropriate venue to follow up on implementation of the GDC. But at the same time, the document also says that the IGF lacks the required financial resources to meet its mandate optimally. So I'd like to suggest that the outcomes document includes a call to action, and that call to action should be to all supporters of the multi-stakeholder approach to lean into the IGF. We can't say we support the multi-stakeholder model as long as somebody else does the work or somebody else pays for it. We are all responsible. We all need to participate and ensure that the discussions of the IGF have the necessary balance of stakeholders and perspectives. And when we, finally, when we're talking about messages to other processes, there would be no greater message to send to the WSIS review in 2025 than a multi-stakeholder plan for sustaining the IGF into the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nobody from the private sector? Okay, then please, government.
Thank you. Susan Chalmers, United States. The IGF plays a critically important role as a multi-stakeholder platform within the UN system, and the United States supports the spirit of the outcome text regarding the IGF. We would like to suggest slight amendments to streamline the text in light of the ongoing negotiations going on regarding the GDC. In the last paragraph presently on the screen, second sentence, we suggest beginning the sentence with collaboration in lieu of mechanisms for, but simply collaboration and information exchange with other international bodies and fora. We're unsure what governance fora refers to precisely, should be enhanced. So again, striking the word fora governance and the word mechanisms for. Please scroll down to the paragraph that begins with the IGF with its structures and mechanisms. Could that be scrolled down on the screen, please? No? Okay. In that case, the IGF with its structures and mechanisms should be used as a space to facilitate implementation and monitoring of the GDC. We simply suggest the IGF should be used as a space to monitor the Global Digital Compact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wants to comment on the IGF? Online, please.
I have a comment from Idia Puyosa. NETmundial may present concrete proposals for strengthening the IGF, such as increasing resources directed towards it, envisioning mechanisms for follow-up on IGF outputs, and promoting mechanisms that ensure all voices are heard at the table, particularly those from civil society in the Global South. NETmundial should strongly warn against the potential risks and unintended coordination problems that could emerge from the creation of numerous new agencies, spaces, mechanisms as proposed in the GDC Zero draft. Creating all these agencies and mechanisms raises issues of funding, coordination, duplication, and conflict of competence. Moreover, it may create barriers to the ability to participate and follow the processes, particularly for civil society and the technical community. Furthermore, some of these spaces would be exclusive to states. Even worse, small and even middle-income countries would not have the resources to be meaningfully engaged in all of these spaces. NETmundial should also warn about any subtle way the GDC may undermine human rights online and offline. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody from the technical community? Private sector? Then it's government, please.
Thank you, Paul Blaker for the UK government. The final sentence on page 10 talks about the strengthening.
What section is this, please?
On the IGF.
Yeah, that I know. What paragraph in that section?
So I think it's the 5th paragraph. It's the final sentence on page 10 of the draft outcome document. Yeah. It talks about strengthening of national and regional IGFs, and would like to suggest an additional sentence. Strengthening links between national and regional IGFs and the annual IGF can help promote inclusion and global representation. We think it's important to include in our document some reference to how the national and regional IGFs can really inform the work of the annual IGF and bring those local and regional conversations to the global level. Thank you.
Thank you. Bertrand, Civil Society.
So Bertrand de la Chapelle, for the record, on a personal basis. I would suggest to insert a sentence that says, it behooves all governments, who have established the IGF as a major outcome of the World Summit on the Information Society, to ensure that the IGF is provided with the sufficient financial resources to fulfill the key responsibilities described above. And if we can find a place in this document that makes a reference. On a side note, not to be included there, I want to take a few seconds to talk about a major elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that we talk constantly about node duplication. And for 20 years, we have every year 2 meetings, the IGF and the WSIS Forum, and we all know in this room why the WSIS Forum was established in the first place, because it was a power struggle between the different organizations, and at the time, the ITU was not happy with the creation of the IGF. Maybe the WSIS Plus 20 review is an appropriate moment to consider in a non-confrontational manner how we can combine forces when we have so little resources to bring people together, and there are complementary elements. The WSIS Forum is a system for reviewing how the action lines are going. I'm sorry to be technical, but meanwhile, the IGF is more about what can we do better? What are the policy issues we want to address? I would love to see that being discussed in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone online?
So we have a comment from Amrita Shodhuri from the civil society. Comment on other processes. There is no mention of the Summit of the Future, which will lead to Pact of the Future. In fact, Chapter 3 of the scope of SOF talks about science, technology, and innovation and digital cooperation. The Summit should be mentioned somewhere in the draft, considering the GDC will be an annex to it.
Thank you. We would like to close the line now. So this is private sector and civil society, and then another person from the government, and then we will go to GDC. Please.
Mark Daresgaard, I would just like to second the comment by the UK government in relation to strengthening collaboration between regional IGFs. That is sorely missing. Just support to that addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Government, please.
Hello, everybody. Irina Zafki from the German government. I would like to underline everything that has been said already by my colleague from the European Commission and also by colleagues from the UK and the US. I just want to add that, or really underline again, the importance that we attach to the IGF as the premier platform for multi-stakeholder action, not only now, but also in the future with the implementation of future processes and results. And I want to add in the very last paragraph one sentence highlighting that, and it reads like that: it should adhere, the IGF, to the principle that governance resists dogmatic bases and remain open to experimental and inclusive processes, underlining, as I said, this fundamental importance of the forum. Thank you.
Just for clarification, do you mean the last sentence of the entire document or of the IGF section?
The last paragraph of the IGF section.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Civil society, please.
I will speak Portuguese. Me chamo Wilson Guilherme.
Wilson Guilherme. I'm representing Coletivas e Partes, which is a collective working in the Amazon region in Brazil. Well, my idea is to talk about financial, economic resources and also the participation of underdeveloped countries. If we consider the participation of Latin American countries that took place in Japan, we were not able to fully participate. Besides that, regarding the last paragraph and strengthening the local and regional IGFs, it's important that we ensure the participation of the youth. I'm focusing on Latin America, and we know that we are working hard in order to have the youth participating in the discussion of internet governance. And the youth is also very important in building up discussions. And finally, I'd like also to add, considering the strengthening of IGF, talking about the need to ensure the safety of participants. So any country that wants to host IGF, it's important that they ensure the safety of all participants that are taking part of that.
Right. Thank you, Ben, for your contribution.
Was there another online comment for the IGF section? Okay.
Before that, we are starting off the GDC section, so please make a queue if you had kindly offer your comments. Go ahead.
So we have a comment from Kiki Long Lim from civil society. It is acknowledged in all of these processes, including the GDC, that barriers such as language, next generation contribution, and infrastructure exist. While not perfect, the EGF is an existing language structure and has significant resources to draw on in different languages. Changing this would add more barriers, not remove them. Stakeholder redistribution of resources from government and private sector to civil society and academia, project limited competitive grants is a known mechanism to destabilize community-led collaboration. It also reinforces power imbalances. Thank you for the comment.
Thank you very much.
All right. Holy Council will moderate Global Digital Compact subsection. Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you, Akinori, and hello everyone. Good morning still. So now we are going to devote around 30 minutes to the Global Digital Compact. So if I do my math right, that could be around 14 interventions of 2 minutes, and the small talking I'm doing right now. So if you want to talk about the GDC, come up to the queues and be prepared, because we only have that limited time. So I will start with academia over there.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of youth delegation and academia sector, I would like to make a brief suggestion about GDC Objective 2. The GDC acknowledges major challenge facing the global digital economy, but does not advance any means of addressing them. For instance, it recognizes that the digital economy is dominated by a handful of companies and states, and also recognizes the asymmetric power between them. But I believe it could have proposed actions through national pro-competition antitrust rules that also dialogues with the new digital regulations, such as Digital Markets Act, DMA, or the main cases around the world involving big techs. So I would like to suggest more dialogue with antitrust law and principles during the development of global digital economy, Objective 2, issues and objectives in order to make the document more realistic and practical, considering the DMA, the new discussions in FTC, and also hearing the antitrust laws of development countries. And is this.
Thank you so much. Let's go to civil society.
Hi, everyone. This is Carolina from the DNS Research Federation. So the GDC is well advanced. It's a process that's far along. So I felt we should make some more sort of explicit statements about what it means for the GDC to place multi-stakeholderism more front and center. A few things we could consider are opportunities, concrete opportunities to participate in the reminder of the process. More articulation with the WSIS process, what it would mean to bring a multi-stakeholder approach to any discussions related to implementation. I also wanted to add the last point that we should mention explicitly that the GDC should avoid duplication with the WSIS process. Right now, the language is very IGF-centric, and I think that's a statement worth making. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carolina. Now I have the ITO. First we have online, sorry.
So we have a remote participant, Levi Siansiki. You can join us, please.
Hi, I'm Levi Siansiki from the Youth IGF movement. So most of our work is around youth engagement in the IGF ecosystem. And I just have two interventions regarding the GDC alongside one of the other. So we have policy action comments, and would like to, with regard to the Global Digital Compact, encourage a constant dialogue between the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Technology, that's the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on digital cooperation, and the globally recognized youth groups working on internet governance. In that regard, we are calling for collaboration between the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Technology and other relevant bodies to develop a process that's for the global recognition of innovative ideas by young leaders in digital cooperation. We have seen how internet governance, especially when moved by government agencies, where they push for a bit more of laws or policies that kind of limit innovation among the youth, and that's something that we are trying to call that there should be a bit more collaboration between youths because they're increasingly adopting the technologies. Then lastly, encourage youth representation in bodies. And for this one, I would like also to urge the NETmundial team to also consider engaging more youths for proactive engagement and interaction so that we're not leaving the youths behind as we are pushing for policies around how the internet should be governed, but have youths' voices heard and also engage them for proper enactment of some of the things from the youth perspective, considering they're the majority of the internet users. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And please be reminded that if possible, focus your comments also on the text. And if you have proposals, that's very welcome, very useful. And now we have Pritam from ITU.
Thank you, Chair. So congratulations on the excellent outcome documents, which has clearly taken shape very well. I just wanted to suggest one edit on page 11 at the end. The para, at the end on which starts with the IGF. Yes, the one we see. So obviously we fully support this para, ITU's commitment to the IGF is 100% and there should be no ambiguity about that. I just wanted to suggest an inclusion, a small edit based on what Bertrand just said, to bring the complementarity with the WSIS forum. So as Bertrand also indicated, the IGF looks at forward-looking governance discussions, drawing on the Tunis agenda. It doesn't really track the action lines as mentioned here. Whereas the WSIS forum is essentially structured around the action lines, the Geneva Plan of Action with the various organizations there and including UNDESA. They host these action line facilitators meeting with the UN system participating. So perhaps, and it also, the WSIS forum also reports to the CSTD. So perhaps, a suggestion would be on the third line, maybe, we can say after UNESCO and through the WSIS action lines, which includes to the annual WSIS forum, and then continue the sentence. And I know that many of you here will be at the WSIS forum in a month's time. So looking forward to seeing you all there. I can also submit my comments over Zoom if it's easier, so that you have it in text. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking whether, is there anyone from online? Not for the time being. Thanks very much. Then we would go further to Jameson, private sector.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jameson Olufuye from Africa ICT Alliance, representing the private sector ICT stakeholders in more than 40 countries in Africa. Well, my suggestion for edit is on the paragraph 3. And that is the IGF with its structures and mechanisms should be used as a space to facilitate, instead of implementation, I'm suggesting exhaustive dialogues and monitoring of global digital compact, working in collaboration with other UN agencies such as ITU, UNDP, UNTAG, UNESCO through the WSIS action line, and with the UN CSTD 2.0, providing a platform for intergovernmental and multi-stakeholder engagement in the monitoring process and for the recommendation of consensus proposals to ECOSOC and the General Assembly. I'm saying this because since 2011, I've had very close interaction with CSTD, especially through its working groups on IGF improvement and enhanced cooperation. And I've seen the multi-stakeholder mechanism work very well in that space. And GDC can take this as a way to improve the CSTD indeed, to bring in more stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jimson, for those concrete proposals. And we would go to the technical community. Is it Pierre?
Thank you very much, Jorge. We would suggest, first of all, AFNIC, a multi-stakeholder organization in France that is in charge of .fr. We would suggest maybe to avoid strong positions on the GDC in the outcome of NETmundial. Because in our view, NETmundial brings clarity on multi-stakeholder governance in a neutral and consensus-based way. As Bertrand said, NETmundial is not an organization, it's more the state-of-the-art of internet governance, how it works, what is it for, what is at stake. In that regard, we would suggest to replace on paragraph 2 the sentence, GDC should avoid creating new structures or processes when existing one could be strengthened, with GDC should take into account the current existing fora on internet governance and digital issues. GDC may be a initiative that we would not talk about in 10 years, and this outcome document has to be long-lasting. And to close, I would like to remind us that, contrary to what I've heard, the WSIS process decided to have an internet governance forum, making a clear distinction between internet and information society. It was written in the Tunis agenda that the internet has evolved into a global facility available to the public, and its governance should constitute a core issue of the information society agenda, which means that even 20 years ago, people made a difference between the digital and internet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pierre. Do we have somebody online? No. Nobody on the academia mic. So we would go to civil society, please.
Thank you very much. Quinn McHugh, representing Article 19 and civil society. Just very quickly, there's currently language in the GDC that takes a lesser definition of the internet than is put forward in the NETmundial document. So we would suggest including between the first and second paragraphs this language. The principles from the NETmundial+10 recognize the need for the internet to be free, open, interoperable, accessible, global, and secure. This language should be reflected in the language adopted by the GDC to uphold consistency and provide an internet that works for all, with a focus on the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. In the following paragraph, the third paragraph, we have specific wording suggestions to add some terms. So the paragraph that begins, the IGF with its structures and mechanisms should be used as a space to facilitate the implementation and monitoring of the Global Digital Compact, working in collaboration with other UN agencies such as the ITU, and then add OHCHR and UN Women, the others, and then through the WSIS action follow-up processes, which includes the annual WSIS forum. So adding that language and then continuing with the last sentence as written. And then we have one following suggestion as well. Sorry, scrolling down a little bit. In terms of the last paragraph, in the last sentence of the last paragraph, to add this after the words internet governance, to include the words through strengthened collaboration with the OHCHR and the other UN human rights mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these concrete proposals. And I'm seeing that the lines are still have more than 10 people. And if I count the time we have left, I'm tempted or even obliged to be closing the lines. So if you have something to say, now it's the moment moment to run to one of the queues, because after that I'm closing. I see David on the government queue, and that will be the end. I count until 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes, that's it. The lines are closed. So we have Piers, European Commission, please.
Thank you, Jorge Pierce O'Donoghue, European Commission, for the record. I had these comments prepared before I heard the intervention from the technical community after Nick. We do not agree to weaken the language addressed to the GDC. On the contrary, we feel that the second and third paragraphs need, if anything, to be strengthened, so that it is key that the GDC avoids creating new structures. We think in the third paragraph specifically, we should just recall in the first line that the IGF, with its multi-stakeholder structures, that is the value added and the essential element which it brings to this discussion. But however, we shouldn't just talk about monitoring of GDC. We should talk about follow-up of the Global Digital Compact. So it's a space to facilitate implementation and follow-up of the Global Digital Compact. And furthermore, we think that there should be a new sentence at the end of this paragraph, this third paragraph, which would read, alternative or parallel GDC follow-up mechanisms threaten to erode the relevance of the IGF and the multi-stakeholder model in internet governance. And final comment, just as I heard our ITU colleague refer to it as well, I would suggest that at the end of the following paragraph, through its implementation, that just at the end of that paragraph we refer to building upon the Tunis agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piers. I don't see anyone from the private sector, and that queue is closed. So I go to the technical community.
Thank you, Jorge. Jordan Carter here from the .au Domain Administration. Just a few comments on this. I think there should be a strong set of references to the GDC. And I like the centering of the IGF as the follow-up process because of the WSIS procedures, as I understand them. It's the most multi-stakeholder of them. It's the most inclusive of them. So I think that should be kept. A couple of suggestions about the section. I think it would be useful to make sure it has a reference to the Summit of the Future. So just contextualizing that the GDC is part of the Summit of the Future work. Secondly, I think there could be a reference in the second or third paragraph to acknowledge that if we want the IGF to pick up lead on implementation and follow up the GDC, it might need to develop new working methods to be able to deliver on that responsibility. So I think that should be called out because it's sort of the bridge between, hey, we need to do a new thing, and hey, we need a new structure. The working method is like the glue in between. So I think that could be usefully done. And I just want to say, for the record, I was intrigued by Bertrand's suggestion about whether one could bring the WSIS Forum and the IGF together, but I don't think we should say anything about that in this document because it's too late. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jordan. And we come back here to civil society. Konstantinos, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Konstantinos Komaitis, Tech and Democracy Initiative at the Atlantic Council. So the GDC should not only avoid creating new duplicative structures, but it should also actively avoid centralizing internet governance functions within the UN system. It is important that the governance of the internet follows the internet's architecture's DNA and to the extent possible remain centralized and fully collaborative. Internet governance is not a monolith and not static. So far, the GDC, with all its new UN-focused mechanisms, seems to treat it as such. Moving discussions and processes deeper into the UN system will put at risk the true participation of a significant number of stakeholders. The GDC should take into consideration the institutional, historical, normative context of internet governance and the important role institutions and processes have played throughout the past 20 years. To this end, the NETmundial+10 must strongly support use of language that points to the need for an open, global, interoperable, free and secure internet. And I would also like to say that I agree with all the previous comments on the need for the follow-up and implementation of the GDC to happen through the IGF. And I will send the text to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Konstantinos. We have civil society, please. Remote civil society.
So Amrita Shodhari, please join us.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to suggest a small text addition in page 11, last para. The first line suggests that the IGF with its structure and mechanisms. In place of that, would suggest, if it is suitable, the IGF with its structures of regional and national IGFs. If something of that kind can be added, it would be good. It shows the depth and reach of the IGF. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amrita. We go to the government. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Tiago Moraes from the Brazilian Data Protection Authority. The comment is also in this third paragraph, so the last one on page 11. I believe that if we're talking about having forums such as the IGF for monitoring, we also should add some lines on the sense of adding indications. So what I'm suggesting is a sentence like that. The GDC should also propose the development of indicators so that internet governance forums such as the IGF can exercise its monitoring of the GDC. These indicators could be based upon NETmundial internet governance process principles.
Thank you so much. Technical community, is it Jennifer? Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Jorge. Jennifer Chung, .Asia organization for the technical community. We support the additions made by Jordan Carter of .au. And also I want to harken back to the submissions earlier by UK and others who supported making the national, regional, sub-regional, and youth initiatives very prominent in this text. I have a concrete text suggestion when I can actually get to my laptop. And this is actually Rita Chowdhury suggested online as well. So in the paragraph that starts the IGF, its structures and mechanisms, I would suggest that we actually use, which we used earlier on in the document, that says the IGF with its intersessional and the national, regional, sub-regional, and youth initiatives. It's really important for us to make these linkages because this is where we can actually get to the grassroots community. This is where we can go back to our different localities and economies and nations to be able to have this follow-up. Thank you.
Thanks. Just on time. Thanks very much. Civil society, please.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Julian Casares. I'm talking on behalf of the Colombian IGF. So the Global Digital Compact should build on what has built around internet governance at the global, regional, and national levels, and from spaces and other initiatives that have discussed the future of the internet, such as this space of NETmundial. The concept of multi-stakeholder collaboration helps to democratize knowledge about internet governance with the possibility that everyone can collaborate, know, and actively participate in the decisions that are made in the internet environment, allow citizens' participation in matters of interest that need to be better disseminated to society. So when mentioning in the second paragraph, for many reasons, the IGF is the appropriate venue to follow up and monitor implementation of the GDC's commitments, we would like to propose to include the IGF and its national and regional initiatives is the appropriate venue to follow up and monitor the implementation of the GDC's commitments. In this way, the participation of different sectors also allows the government and other interested parties to understand the needs of the users in public policies of a territory, uniting opinions and favoring the exposure of social needs, such as the need to reform in public policies, being a relevant way for the creation of effective forms of direct communications between stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Julian. We have a remote participant, please. And I understand that this is the second but last of the remote participants. We are not taking more, just 2 more.
Okay.
Thank you.
Representing civil society remotely, we have a comment from Kiki Long Lin that says, additional to paragraph 2 should not add burdens on timeframes for civil society. Suggestion: review objective timeframes in GDC as they only reference by 2030 we will. Many of these items require completion within the next 2 years should the SDGs be met. GDC could draw and be strengthen existing sources of information and analysis within the IGF community. Current geopolitical conflict is testing the tangibility of international humanitarian law and human rights. Do we still believe this wording alone is sufficient? Do we have clear identification of which laws would apply? All initiatives should seek to establish an APAC region presence as well as Euro-US based. This is in line with the global representation of people in these priority areas. The IGF is developing forum and organizations such as ISOC are naturally moving towards as well set up conduit between civil society, academia, and technical community members. They offer an excellent entry point to the wider internet digital governance initiatives as they desired goals. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that rich input. We go over to government. Luciano, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Luciano Maza, Brazilian Minister of Foreign Affairs. Paragraph 2, concretely, the second line, when it says GDC should avoid creating new structures or processes, my suggestion would be should avoid duplicating structures or processes. Because I think there's a discussion here that we shouldn't necessarily get involved where we're talking about strengthening the multi-stakeholder processes with a view, in my perception, in Brazil's perception, to strengthen governance of the digital world. New institutions may be required, we don't know. The outcome of GDC can, in our view, should point to novel elements in the governance space. They are not necessarily duplicating what we have. Not everything that's under consideration will follow naturally within the scope of the WISs and the implementation dimensions that we already have. So I think would be cautious to have a nuanced writing in this. And again, the same paragraph, when the fourth line, when any reasons the IGF is the appropriate venue to follow up, again, my suggestion would be to use indefinite article and not a definite article to say is an appropriate venue to follow up. Because again, I think a lot of very positive views on the IGF, and I think that's, we are all on the same page on this, but we shouldn't make a confusion about what the IGF is and what the IGF should be. And I think in this case, we have a long way to go before the IGF could be the only single venue to follow up and monitor implementation of the GDC commitments. So that's my 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luciano. And I think we close the technical community line with Nicolas.
Thank you so much. Nicolas from Internet Standard Security and Safety Dynamic Coalition. In line with Rita's comments and Jennifer's comments in the second graph, it will be great to, when mentioning existing structures, to mention like the IGF framework of national, youth, sub-regional, regional, and global IGF, and also the dynamic coalition, best practice forums, and policy networks, because these are the fundamental groups or intersectional work that could review and follow up on the GDC. And then another comment on the final part, because the word duplicated efforts is not in the GDC paragraph, so that will be great to have it to emphasize on really not duplicating existing mechanisms. Thank you.
Thank you. much, Nicolas. Sébastien, you are closing the civil society line.
Yes, thank you very much, Sébastien Bachelet. Just a process issue. I have colleagues online who are asking if you will be taken into account their comment in the Zoom chat because they were not read, and I can understand for timing reason, but how it will be handled by the group of writers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sébastien. And I understand we have a last input from remote participation. The last one, please. No? There's no other input. Okay. So this gives the governments the last word. I don't know if this was intentional, but we have Canada at the mic. You are closing the government line. Introduce yourself, please.
Wonderful introduction. Let me just start by saying good morning. Thank you, Jorge. My name is David Fairchild. I work at our permanent mission in Geneva. It is a great pleasure to be here today. This is the first and probably, I guess at this point, only time I'll be taking the floor. So let me thank the conference organizers. I think I heard this comment yesterday, and I think I want to just start by mentioning not only Canada, but every member state that is here. Our presence is about supporting the multi-stakeholder model. So I just wanted to reflect that I really took to heart one of the comments suggesting that member states also need to get on the plane, get on the train, and make their way to where the conversations are taking place. And I'm very happy to be here today. The other thing I just wanted to comment is, of course, I spent the last day plus listening more than talking, which is often very difficult for diplomats and governments. But I think it was important to listen and take into consideration a lot of the comments that were made. I'm just going to make one amplifying comment because I believe the European Union, Pierce from the Commission, made a similar comment. With GDC negotiations starting in 2 days, the timing of this event has been really critical to help us better understand multi-stakeholder perspectives. And in this regard, it's the paragraph starting with the IGF with its structures. I do think that we need to actually instruct and support the call for instructing the WSIS and the IGF to actually develop the mechanisms and recommendations to implement the Global Digital Compact. Because simply the sense that I get is that there's a concern that the GDC is looking to duplicate and create a new mechanism. So I think we just wanted to amplify our consideration that the language should be strengthened in that paragraph to make it very clear that from a NETmundial perspective that we feel that the WSIS and IGF, in fact, are the correct vehicles to implement the outcomes of the GDC. And I do, just finish by saying, I think it's important to put a reference to the Pact of the Future because there are other cyber, digital, and tech issues that are coming through in that negotiations that are not covered by the GDC. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David, for that thoughtful reflection. And we are at the end of this subsection on the GDC. We had around 20 inputs. So I'll pass the baton back to Akinori, our master of ceremonies.
Thank you very much, Jorge, for this section. And then let's go move on to another section of the other potential messages to be moderated by Jason.
Thank you, Akinori. Thanks, everyone, for your great input so far. So this is the final section in section 4, 4.4 on other processes. We've talked a lot about WSIS, GDC, and IGF, and this is the part of the document that makes reference to a broader set of initiatives, processes, and spaces. So we'll take contributions. We have a little bit less than 30 minutes, and we will need a little bit of time to wrap up. So hopefully we can move quickly. I see the technical community in line first, and then we'll go through sector by sector. Please.
Hello, my name is João Moreno Falcão. I'm here representing the Youth Standing Group, but I will give voice to concerns raised in the IS3C discussions. I work with cybersecurity, and I acknowledge that this security in the cyberspace is an important multi-stakeholder endeavor. But unfortunately, security is vaguely cited only once inside 4.4 other processes. So I would like to change the wording of one of the bullet points that is the one that cites security to technology standards development processes, encouraging the adoption of an interoperable standards that promote accessibility, security, and innovations. Initiatives which address gaps in the implementation of security-related standards and increase online safety, as well as enhancing multi-stakeholder participation.
Thank you for that concrete suggestion. We'll go next to the private sector, Jimson.
Thank you very much. This is Jimson, Affecta. We just have two comments. The first one is to say that we should not take it for granted that anyone reading the document will understand what we mean by ITU, UNESCO, WIPO, OHCHR, OEWG. So we need to say this clearly before we use the acronym. That's one. Then if you go to the last paragraph, I would like to add, after bias, that we should recognize what happened at the United Nations General Assembly on March 21st, 2024, concerning AI. And so I will propose in tandem with the March 21st, 2024 UNGA resolution on AI. So the last paragraph, and maybe a last text to be appended. So after the bias, to be in tandem with the March 21st, 2024 UN General Assembly resolution on AI. It's a very important resolution and we should capture it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimson. I'll go to government next, please.
Thank you, Pierce O'Donoghue, European Commission. We have made available to the pen holders a number of smaller textual changes, but for this section in general, we would like to see a much more explicit reference to human rights, which we think is one of the extra issues that is not sufficiently addressed in some of the GDC and other documents we've seen recently. As a result, in the introductory paragraph to 4.4, we feel that while not in any way wishing to downplay the importance of bridging the digital divide, that it should speak of prioritization of efforts to protect human rights and bridge the digital divide, and then to continue thus promoting a fair and democratic digital inclusion, again going forward, particularly in underserved and marginalized communities and regions, and finishing with and across gender and age groups. Consistent with those suggestions, we would like to add to the last two bullet points of section 4.4 references to, again, human rights, so that the second last bullet point would read that promote accessibility, security, innovation, and human rights, as well as enhancing multi-stakeholder participation. And then in the last bullet point, that this issue should strive for a human rights and risk-based development that prioritizes transparency, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go online, and then I'm going to call for closing the queue in the room, and then online, just because we do need to move on with the agenda. So any comments? None at the moment online. Then we'll move to civil society in the room. And please close the queues.
Thank you. My name is Sheikh Wahid. I am from Tech Global Institute, speaking for civil society. We are suggesting the following additions and changes to strengthen the list of relevant organizations and processes. On the first section of bullet points, on the first bullet point, the broader UN community, including ITU, adding UNCTAD, UNESCO, adding UN Women, UNFPA, WIPO, OHCHR, OEGWG, adding UNICEF, adding COP, and others, which should strive to strong interaction and collaboration between multi-stakeholder and multilateral processes. On the fourth bullet point, the G20 Digital Economy Working Group, adding and its engagement groups in parentheses, such as the C20, T20, B20, Y20, and W20, close parentheses, which should stress the importance of global data governance framework that respect privacy, promote data protection, and facilitate trust in digital transactions. On the second set of bullet points, on the second to last bullet point, we want to rewrite the sentence as technological standards development processes, thereby encouraging the adoption of open and interoperable standards that promote accessibility, security, and innovation. They should enhance participation of global majority technical, civil society, and academic communities. Thank you.
Thank you, academic. Alison.
Thank you, Alison Gilwald, Academia South Africa. I really think this is a section where we can address some of the economic underlying structural inequalities that we're unable to address in the ordinary internet governance issues. So I would really like us to frame that first section in a way that does not continue the sort of platitudes of digital inclusion and digital divides, but move towards strongly language of redressing digital inequality, redressing the uneven opportunities that are derived from these increasingly data-driven technologies that are being overlaid over current inequalities and amplifying those inequalities. I think we can do this by going back to the question, and this is to support Minister Massa's point, is that the scope of the GDC is far broader than our current scope of internet governance. And so we will have to go back and either say, yes, we are very consciously and actively including all digital, increasingly globalized digital public goods, such as the internet, data, cybersecurity, etc., in that mandate, or we are going to have to acknowledge that there are going to be other forms of global governance required in order to realize those globalized digital public goods at the national level. And that is a way that I think that we can emphasize the importance again of multi-stakeholderism in those processes to effectively address those problems. Going specifically to those points then, many of these processes, as I said, are more concerned with redressing those systemic issues. One would need to include in the broader UN community, of course, UNCTAD, ITU, UNCTAD, UNESCO. UNCTAD has, of course, been a critical partner with ITU in measuring the information society, but also the very important digital economy reports. The Sustainable Development Goals, I think we should be more actively saying what ICTs could be doing to assist the failure to address those. And just to say very importantly, on the G20, I think we've got a particular strategic moment with the Troika leadership of India, Brazil, and South Africa that has allowed us to bring a digital agenda. Brazil in particular has opened up the T20 to think tanks and Global South universities that are really changing the evidence base for the G20 Digital Working Group. And the Digital Working Group there should not only be addressing issues of data governance and policy, which are of course important, but really redressing digital inequality more broadly.
Thank you, Alison. So, online? We'll go back to the
Sorry, it's okay. We have a comment from William J. Drake from the academic sector. The list of other processes is really selective, and so people are pointing out the many processes and issues that are not listed. There would seem to be at least 3 options for improvement. 1, expand the list to be truly representative. 2, delete the list, which may not be adding great value. Or 3, as suggested previously by Chris Buckridge, move the list to an annex. Any of these options seems preferable to the status quo.
Thank you. Over to the technical community in the room.
Thank you. My name is Tobias. I'm speaking on behalf of Internet Society Brazil Charter. For the record, I will speak in Portuguese. Então, da mesma linha que o João falou...
So just as João mentioned before,
I suggest the inclusion in the first part of the bullet points, bullet point number 5, more specifically, to include cryptography. Actually, we need to talk about also these development processes. He meant encryption, actually, encryption as a, when we talk about regulations and policies that are a threat to the internet, and also to prevent the use of backdoors, and also to have a government surveillance.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Kézia. I'm part of the Brazilian youth delegation and also part of the private sector. In section 4.4, page 12, especially in the section opening paragraph, I'd like to suggest adding a passage to highlight the importance of fostering youth presence in this space, such as the NETmundial+10 emphasizes the importance of youth in all this process, aiming to broaden diversity in the multi-stakeholder debate. I suggest that because in the draft, there's only one mention of youth in section 4.1 when describing the current role of the IGF. However, both the substantive themes and the process we've been discussing since yesterday will influence and even define how we all deal with internet in the coming decades. Yet we, the youth, are still underrepresented in this space. It would be important for this mention to also be made in the opening paragraphs of section 4.4 to make it clear that the youth presence is desired and encouraged in diverse spaces mentioned in this section, such as national and regional policymaking process and in the OECD. Lastly, I would like to reaffirm that, as my colleagues said before me, youth bring other important views, experiences, and perspectives to internet governance. Bringing these viewpoints into the debate can help us materialize the principles that are so fundamental to internet governance. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got 10 minutes left. We're going to finalize these speakers. Please be brief because we need to sum up. We'll go to the governments.
Thank you, Luciano. Again, sorry for the double dip, Brazilian government. I think that's a tricky session, and the problem with lists is that they're never complete. And I just like to echo some of the comments that came before from different sectors. I think the list is selective, and the problem is, differently from other sections of the documents, we dive into some substantial dimensions of different negotiation forums, and that I think is not the focus of our document. I think we should perhaps strengthen the first paragraph and radically streamline what comes later. I think there are some paragraphs that are more process-oriented, like the one about the UN community that talks about interaction, collaboration. That's very much in line with what we are discussing. There's one paragraph about national, regional digital policy formulation processes. I think that's not other processes. This is part of what we're discussing and should perhaps be moved to other areas of the document. Apart from this, my suggestion is that we either delete everything or just make an inter alia list, and that's all. Because there are a lot of judgments that are made about the discussions that are ongoing in this forum. They are incomplete, they are not necessarily faithful to the reality of those forums. So I think that we should be careful about this section, try to be more straightforward, and I would suggest a radical streamlining of this one. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Luciano. We're going to go to civil society. I think we're only going to be able to take, one more intervention from each. So if you want to collaborate, please do, but please keep your speaking times short.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna make two brief comments in general on, for example, we I'm sorry, I'm Grecia Macias from our treaty. To do a cross-cutting amend on the text, and we suggest replacing the terminology of global south with global majority, and also adding the following wording in the preamble of this section, like the wording saying that it's commendable that efforts are made toward, thank you, towards achieving a general consensus and enhancing coordination in the discussions to avoid contradictions, inefficient allocation of resources, and legal uncertainty. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Grecia. Online?
We have a remote participant from civil society, Richard Bailey. Please, you may join us.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Rishabh Bailey, and I represent a consumer protection organization called Public Citizen based in Washington, D.C. As some have already commented, the list of processes in Section 4.4 is incomplete. In this context, I'd like to draw your attention to how trade agreements have increasingly become an avenue for governance of the internet and broader digital ecosystem, covering issues such as data governance, AI regulation, cryptography, spam, and online consumer redress. However, the negotiation of trade agreements, which often contain binding legal commitments, are insufficiently inclusive, open, and transparent. Negotiating texts in trade agreements are often secret and unavailable for public comment. Stakeholders, in particular civil society, academia, and the technical community, must have the ability to meaningfully engage with trade processes that seek to govern the digital ecosystem. Section 4.4 of the outcome document should therefore include a reference to trade negotiations occurring at the WTO and other venues. A specific reference to trade negotiations could be made in the other processes section. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for being concise. We'll go to the room. Technical community, last intervention, please.
Okay. I'm Natalia Solchuk from Brazil. I'm a Latin America representative at the NRO Review Committee. And I want to make a more general comment that it should be interesting to be added potentially to the last point, bullet points of the session in the document. Recently, we have to make some changes in the rules regarding quorum and consensus for meetings in the NRO Review Committee because it's not having elections for representatives in the Afrinic region. Unfortunately, Afrinic is co-opted by groups that are not working for the benefit of the community. And this is also affecting the whole community of the RAI globally. So my reflection here is how we could make all the internet governance processes resilient enough against the co-optation of groups that don't represent the interests of the internet community and not acting for the benefit of the internet governance, especially in the technical forums like RAIs, ITF, ICANN, and W3C. It should be important to mention efforts on the matter of making those processes resilient. So thank you.
Obrigado, Natalia. I think we just have one last intervention from the academic, and then we'll wrap up. Please.
Yes, thank you. My name is Laura Pereira. I work as a researcher at a Digital Democracy Institutional Lab here at Getúlio Vargas Foundation, but I'm speaking more as by my personal experience in working in academia with the institutional field of internet governance. I believe that the message from NETmundial to other process is exactly at the clear recognition of an inflection point in governance in internet versus governance of the internet. And I believe this is not sufficiently clear and stated in this first bullet about national and regional digital policy formulation processes. I agree with the other participants that recommended a more clear and more defined emphasis on this point, because I believe so in the same way as NETmundial at 2014 had the Snowden case as its context and inflection points in background, I believe now we are at the risk of not making a sufficient statement about how national policy, national process are in contrast or in dialogue with internet governance, more traditional institutional governance. So I believe we should expand on that point, on these general lines, and not for the document, but because we had very few participants from academia here at the input. I believe that we as academia can also contribute to this crisis in the field by working on defining, redefining, reconceptualizing internet governance and internet governance relationship with the governance of the digital world. I believe we need to try to conceptualize multi-stakeholderism again and maybe revisit our theoretical basis. So this is it for the inputs and for general comments. Thank you.
And there we are. One final online contribution, and then we will sum up.
We have a last remote participant from private sector, Cristiane Sanchez Correia. Please join us. Cristiane, you may speak. You may unmute your microphone, please.
Thank you. My name is Cristiane Correia. I'm from Abrinci, the Brazilian Association of Internet Services Providers. And we have a comment on item 4.4 on the preliminary text. We understand that there are several overreaching reasons why billions of people remain offline, ranging from a lack of network infrastructure, availability and affordable internet services to gaps in skills and ability. In this sense, this item 4.4 should include not only holistic and consistent view, but also a risk-based approach. Also, regarding the efforts that the text say about bridging the digital divide and promoting digital inclusion, we believe it's better to say that we have to achieve meaningful connectivity for all and ensure no one is left behind in a way that we could provide reliable and affordable last mile networks and services to unserved and underserved citizens and communities. All these comments is related to the best language when we speak about last mile in the last ITU meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Cristiane. Muito obrigado pelas intervenções. I have the chair of this session is a representative of the Swiss government, and everyone knows the importance that the Swiss government puts on punctuality. So it is a challenging task for me to sum up this session with -1 minute to go. But I do want to just highlight a few really key points. First of all, just noting that we have a very detailed transcript of both the online and the in-person interventions that we will be passing along to the pen holders for this section. Clearly, there is strong support for the IGF as a central mechanism and for being more robustly descriptive of what we mean by the IGF to include all of its structures, regional, national IGFs, and intersessional workflow processes. So we will strive to do justice to all of the components of that, including, of course, the youth track. The importance of addressing youth participation was made clear in this session. There is also, I think, a clear consensus on the need to avoid duplication and unnecessarily creating new forums and spaces. The IGF can be and should be a critical mechanism for achieving that, even if it is not definitive as the only place where such coordination can be achieved. I think there were some important and very constructive suggestions about how to refer not just to WSIS as a process, but also reference its action lines and the WSIS forum. There were also very strong and important recommendations with regard to the GDC process and the need to ensure that that process is both learning from and building on the practices and the good practices that have been developed in this community that are highlighted in this document, but also that the follow-up of the GDC is done in a mechanism that is consistent with those principles. I think the last section is going to be perhaps one of the trickiest for the pen holders. There were some good points made about how to expand upon and deepen the relevant organizations and processes that are listed, but also an important point made about the impossibility of listing every relevant initiative, and so the pen holders will need to reflect on that feedback. The concept of leaning into the IGF, including the importance of providing resources, the importance of strengthening the mechanisms for deciding on participation, including the host country, the importance of highlighting human rights, both in this document and in the ways it references the IGF, the need for experimentation and perhaps new working methods as specific recommendations for how we can encourage strengthening of the IGF were all duly noted. So I'll invite the rest of my panelists to add anything that I may have missed, but I think I want to close personally by just thanking the CGI in particular for doing such an incredible job putting this together, and all of you for participating in person and online, notwithstanding all of the challenges and obstacles that I know you've faced.
Right. Maybe the last few words from the all moderators. Janet? No? Okay. Okay. Then thank you very much, everyone, for this. This is conclude our working session number 3. So thank you very much for your input, and then that will be reflecting the finalization of the outcome document, and then HLEC will work on that from now on to finalize it, and then it will be presented in the last part of this today. And with that, I will return the floor to the MC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to these excellent speakers and to all of you who took part in this session. Thanks again, and we hope you continue to take part in this discussion, okay? As I said before, and as you know it, your participation is core to our event. Let's just wait 1 second, and then we'll head to the last session before lunch. And I also remind you that we have Wi-Fi during all the event, and the instructions are at the back of your badges, okay? And I also remind you not to forget to return the headsets for translation at the end of our agenda, all right? Okay, so now let's move on to the last session before lunch. Our session is NETmundial+10 follow-up and the implementation of outcomes. With this session, we aim to gather views from the audience with regards to how NETmundial+10 outcomes will be carried on by the community and how they will be implemented in relevant fora. It will be moderated by Veridiana Alimonti from the Electric Frontier Foundation and Guilherme Canella from UNESCO. Let's welcome them on stage. So you can start.
Bom, boa tarde. Ainda que eu
Good afternoon.
even though I'm Brazilian, as you all know, I've agreed with Veridiana that I would be making my remarks in English so that there would be diversity, and then she's going to carry on in Portuguese.
As the Master of Ceremony has said, my name is Guilherme Canella, and I'm the head of the Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists section at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. A pleasure to be here with you in this very important discussion. Sometimes, and I'm speaking from the experience of the international multilateral organizations, we spent a lot of effort in discussing our documents, our principles, our guidances, and we don't spend the same amount of time in discussing implementation, which at the end of the day is what we all desire, how we improve the quality of implementation of the decisions and the different instruments that we collectively discuss, luckily in this forum, in a multi-stakeholder manner. So this session, it's not to discuss the content of the NETmundial+10 document in itself. It's precisely to discuss the strategies of implementation of the outcomes that are being drafted and negotiated while we are here pre-lunch to have this discussion. So very briefly, as I was saying, when we assess the lessons learned regarding the implementation of different strategies, for instance, in the multilateral system, evaluators quite often tell us that one of the most recurrent problems in getting better results and the impacts of the things we discuss is the deficits in the implementation strategy of the different policies that we craft in different areas. And that's unfortunate because sometimes we, as I was saying before, we invest a lot of time in producing these important policies, and then we see several issues in the implementation phase. So we hope, Veridiana and myself, but I will pass the ball to her now, that this particular discussion now, pre-lunch, will offer some insights on how we can improve the implementation of the outcomes of this NETmundial+10. Veridiana, over to you.
Thank you, Guilherme. Good afternoon, everyone. So in the name of inclusive participation and considering we are in Brazil and have many Brazilian participants, I will switch into Portuguese for these initial remarks. Boa tarde, eu sou Veridiana Limonte, sou diretora associada de política.
I'm Veridiana Limonte. I am with Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is an organization with national action for human rights and technology. And as Guilherme was saying, also from the perspective of civil society, we have had a number of experiences of building principles, recommendations, and usually followed by challenges of implementation. IFF and others, civil organizations, we have already been involved in these initiatives to try to implement and enforce principles of rights, of proportionality in the surveillance of communication, and also in the principles of Santa Clara for content moderation. And here we are discussing how can we move on to internet governance or digital governance that is effectively diverse, inclusive, participative, democratic, in which all stakeholders are with a seat at the table, having the opportunity to have their voices heard. And for the past day and a half, we've been discussing extensively, and now we have the next challenge. How are we going to move on from now on? How are we going to take forward the conclusions and the outcomes of the final document? How each sector is going to do it? What are the relevant forums where we can do it, and what are the important mechanisms within each of these fora for us to implement them? And as we are here at NETmundial+10, we have had a very relevant discussion 10 years ago, exactly at the same venue. A lot has happened since then, but I can tell you that, yes, the fact that we are here 10 years later is to some extent also representing a gap from what we have achieved since the first document. So I think it is on us to create now the path towards effective implementation and appropriate follow-up of what's going to be approved today when we get to the end. Now I'm going to switch to English.
Procedures for the session. We will follow the same procedure, so we have an open mic for each stakeholder, and for each one we will ask remote online moderation if we have participants that want also to make an intervention online. And I really hope to have your engagement, because since we've been discussing these 2 days how we would like to see the final document, what is the language that we want to see reflected there, we also now need to talk about how we're going to implement it. So I see we have someone in the civil society line is starting it, so please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sébastien Bachelet, Internet Society France and European Regional At-Large Organization. My name is French Sébastien, not Spanish Sébastien, Bachelet, B-A-C-H-O-L-L-E-T, please. Thank you. Whatever. I wanted to talk about, I was there 10 years ago in NETmundial, and I am happy to be back 10 years after, but I hope that the next time we will talk about or use the output of NETmundial+10 will not be in 10 years. I will be happy to be back in 10 years, and I'm sure that we are very thankful to the CGBR to organize this meeting, but we can't wait for them to reorganize that in 10 years and not talk about what is happening here and the output of NETmundial 10 years ago and NETmundial now. And therefore, I would like that we eat our own food. We say in the paragraph just before that there needs to be a place where we discuss the output of different groups, and we put a long list, and we were discussing about this list. I would like to add this list, NETmundial, on this list, because it could be a good way to have some follow-up and not to wait just for the Brazilian to show up in 10 years. And IGF, it's a good place for that, and maybe there will be some dynamic coalition, one existing, or maybe to create one specific on that, or any other way to discuss that at the IGF could be a good way for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian. I see that we don't have other colleagues in the other queues of the other groups, but I don't know if online, before I get civil society from Henriette, if we have other stakeholder groups online. No? So, Henriette, please.
Thanks, Guillermo. I'm Henriette Esterhuizen, Association for Progressive Communications. Thank you, Sebastian. Just building on Sebastian's remarks, I think I would like to make a concrete suggestion that CGI.BR and the High-Level Executive Committee convenes an open forum at the 2024 IGF to share the very specific experience and outcomes of NETmundial+10. I also want to recommend, as Sebastian suggested, the formation of a dynamic coalition on implementation of the NETmundial principles and guidelines. I can share that with the UNESCO Internet Universality Indicators. There is a dynamic coalition which has been very useful in taking forward the application. And I also think it's worth noting that the UNESCO Internet Universality Indicators includes a section on multi-stakeholder that can be referenced. And then finally, I think it would be good if the NETmundial+10 outcome document can call on existing and emerging internet and digital governance processes to apply the guidelines and principles and share the experience of doing so through this IGF Dynamic Coalition. And I think that remark should include a specific mention that the guidelines and processes are of value for multi-stakeholder processes as well as for multilateral processes.
Thank you, Henriette. And online, please.
Have a remote participant from the academic sector. William J. Drake, you may join us.
Hello. Further to Henriette's point, I would just say one of the biggest problems we face is the lack of institutionalized dialogue and coordination across stakeholder groups. During WSIS and in the years after, we had some processes that facilitated that, but they've all eroded. And so it's now only on an ad hoc basis that such cooperation seems to arise. For example, most recently in the negotiations in the UN Cybercrime Treaty, there was a lot of coordination among different stakeholder groups taking a common kind of position vis-a-vis what some governments were doing. I think since we're all here together, why not use this event to try to catalyze and reanimate coordination among stakeholder groups so we can push a common agenda where we agree, or at least have dialogue in cases where our agendas differ. And so if the Secretariat, for example, could establish an open platform with mail lists or other kinds of vehicles so that we could have a starting point for people to begin to communicate. And that would also probably help within the stakeholder groups to foster greater coherence. People tend to rise to the situation. When there was WSIS or something happening, people began to coordinate. So if you create a space, people may begin to coordinate within groups and across groups more effectively than they do now. Thanks.
Thank you. We have another online, please.
We have a comment from Olivier Alais from the government. He's a program coordinator at ITU. Technical standards help technologies work together. They help make them safer, more accessible, more affordable, and more sustainable. Moreover, governments have obligations to protect human rights set out under international human rights law, including the digital context. To build trust, stakeholders should work together with the ITU and OHCHR to translate human rights into technical terms and embed human rights into technical standards. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. More online. I don't see other people in the queues, but look, we really want to stimulate you to come forward. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead. I'm glad someone, technical community, please.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Julia. I am from Brazil. I represent the Gender Standing Group from the Internet Society. And I'm glad that I was able to be here at this moment right now, because for actions, for implementations, I think there has been a lacking of safe passage between all the IGFs, local or internationals, and all the NRIs to establish a solid communication with the international relations departments of countries, because sadly last year we had I wouldn't dare to say a mass denial of entry from participants, but something that was worryingly surprising to all of us, since we had not only a CEO of one of the most important civil society entities here in Brazil denied passage because of a irregularity with his passport, but also a lot of Middle Eastern and especially Pakistani participants being denied entry because they were deemed with a chance of trying to emigrate to Japan, which is something that I know that the government of Japan didn't do in bad faith, but it represents a really strong lack of communication between the departments of that allow entry of the participants and the country saying that it is ready to receive everyone and every idea. So a pressing matter for actions for safe passage, safe conduct to participants of all the NRIs.
Thank you for your contribution. Here now, civil society.
Thank you. Olga Kirilluk from Internews. I must say that it is becoming a very nice text, but unfortunately mostly declarative with no actionable outcome incorporated by design. It is all again about what we want, and nothing will happen over the course of the next 10 years if we do not take any action following this meeting to clarify exactly who and how we will be implementing these aspirational statements. In case of IGF, at least, it is happening on an annual basis, and we can expect some continuation of discussions. Same for VCs and same expected for GDC. But NETmundial is the event which is happening once in a decade. The key question we should be asking ourselves is who will be making sure that everything which is reflected in this outcome document will be turned into action. We should move from discussions about the principles we all like to committing to actions and taking practical steps, which is much more painful and effort intensive, but only this way we can make sure that any real change happens and that we have something more tangible to be proud of and to discuss when we meet after the 10 years or hopefully even sooner. Connecting the processes and avoiding duplication is not only about sending a wish list to these processes, but we also should have a very clear action plan, which is added to this visionary paper that we currently have. So I believe it would be very helpful if all stakeholders who are present here in the room today would be actually leaving this room with having a clear understanding of what is that commitment that they are taking back with them and what is it that they can be doing once they are back to their daily routine. But also, it would be good to have some kind of follow-up section incorporated directly in this outcome document, which would be reflecting on how are we planning to connect with all those processes, especially the ones which are mentioned in this loan 4.4 subsection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Academia.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Umo Pajaro, University of Malmo. The outcomes on the Mundial should be addressed and guided not only as the result of one event, but for the good and the benefit of internet governance should be articulated as a relation organizations or call to actions in an easy language that allows interoperability in terms of policy and effectively enhance the multi-stakeholder model in the current internet governance processes where it's used and allows to be used where it isn't. This model not only for recommendation of follow the current and evolving digital ecosystem, but mainly for decision-making processes by consensus related to internet and digital spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Government and NGOs.
Thank you. Roz Kennyburge, UK Government. It is right that the NETmundial outcome document strongly reaffirms the need for meaningful multi-stakeholder engagement. We've talked about the importance of multi-stakeholder participation in processes such as the GDC and the WSIS review. But we should, as others have said today, recognize the need for organizations to do more to fulfill the NETmundial principles. For example, we warmly welcome the development at the IETF of a dialogue on public policy issues, and we should build more on this to include governments, civil society, and other stakeholders. At ICANN, we have seen progress in addressing policy issues such as DNS abuse, but the ICANN community needs to do more to fully address public policy interests in a timely way. It also needs to step up efforts to reach out to stakeholders from around the world. The ITU has great multi-stakeholder initiatives such as Partner to Connect, but its Council Working Group on Internet issues is still closed to non-governmental stakeholders, and we believe that needs to change. These are just some examples, and none of this is intended to criticize particular organizations. Governments also have a lot more to do. The point is that we all have responsibilities to make these changes happen in reality and ensure that the NETmundial principles are not just abstract theory. We hope this meeting in Sao Paulo and the document that we will produce will give us a renewed determination and energy to make it happen in reality. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. So now we're on a remote and then back to the lines.
We have a remote participant from civil society, Christophe Gauthier. Please, you may join us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christophe Gauthier. I'm speaking out of Paris, even though our organization, I40 Knowledge, is global. I wanted to mention 4 elements. The first one is we are a global network providing knowledge to implement regulation of digital platforms based on UNESCO Internet Fortress guidelines. So we are very in favor of having well-defined stakeholder groups contributing in this NETmundial document and outcome. The second one is we recognize that collective deliberation is a complex process and that we would favor using already existing mechanisms and tools like poll.is or quadratic voting that are new mechanisms that have shown their power in terms of empowerment for different stakeholders and making it more efficient for collective intelligence. The third element is about hybrid tools. We keep thinking hybrid as in-person versus remote, but hybrid is evolving into a new world, which is a combination of human production and synthetic production from generative AI. And we have new generative AI agents that are helping for deliberative processes, and we would like to see these tools being developed by a technical community and supported by multilateral organizations. And that's the fourth point, which is in order to do this, we probably would need to have some kind of digital public infrastructures that are strong enough for all the multi-stakeholder communities to be able to contribute. So we would favor to have some elements related to this in the outcome document. Thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. And now we go to private sector.
Thank you. Mark Daresgaard, Internet Governance Consultant. I'm a big supporter of NETmundial+10, have been for a long time. I even published articles about this before when it was just an idea. But I can't help but notice that we have a very significant absence of members of the ICANN community and the IETF community and similar policymaking bodies related to the technical infrastructure of the internet. So at some point, this must mean that we failed to reach out to them. We failed to include them in the process or offer the correct framing for their participation. So whatever result we arrive at, we'll be missing in many of those voices. And this is something that is not being stressed enough. So can we retroactively correct that? Would it be possible for us to maybe expose this document to these communities and seek input? Maybe they don't want to give input, but it would be valuable to know if they do, because their lack of presence is significant and it's not something we can just brush over. So looking towards the delivery of this document and the next steps that follow NETmundial+10, this is something that we definitely need to make into a priority so that this document does reflect what we want it to reflect and that it does include all the voices we want to be heard. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's take technical community, civil society and academia.
So, hello again, everyone. I'm Dina Santana from Internet Society Accessibility Standing Group. And I would like to mention regarding, as already said, it's necessary policy integration with national and regional policies and also with multilateral forums. And I would like to suggest also establish metrics to define measurable indicators to track progress in implementing all the outcomes, and also regular reports to publish periodic on the status of implementation, challenges faced, and lessons learned. Thank you.
Thank you. Bertrand, s'il vous plaît.
I'm Bertrand de la Chapelle, speaking in a personal capacity. I could not help but smile listening to one of the previous comments from the UK, and no disregard, but the simple mention of the working group on internet issues at the ITU being closed brings me back almost 20 years ago, when as a French representative, I was participating in a negotiation of the resolution that was supposed to open this group in 2006 at the plenipotentiary. And if I could find, I don't think I could find a better illustration of the fact that in the last 20 years, the entire system has been stuck in this endless discussion about multilateral versus multi-stakeholder. I think the main message that I would like everybody here to get from this stock-taking of NETmundial+10 is that the period between now and the end of 25, this year between now and the end of 25, the WSIS+20 process review is the moment where we really have to collectively address the question of, do we have the right institutions for the governance of the digital world? Do we have those institutions? The answer clearly today is no, because we are dealing with transnational issues and the international system is based on international questions. We have to finish all the components in the IGF with all the different building blocks that it has to do the transition into a fully functional architecture. But we need to make 25 the moment when we re-engineer the IGF to give it its full potential.
Merci, thank you. Academia.
Good morning, I am Messias Bandeira from Federal University of Bahia, here in Brazil. I believe that NETmundial+10, as well as the final document of this meeting, should be more assertive about two aspects that I think are central to the many internet governance process. First, I believe that the public interest should be the horizon of all global internet governance process, and that this term should be included as a universal value. Secondly, respect for and encouragement of cultural diversity should be included in the document as a fundamental parameter of governance process. The term cultural diversity does not appear in the document, and I have the feeling that this is a gap, because internet governance should consider not only multi-stakeholder dimension, but also cultural diversity, as we experienced during these 2 days of NETmundial+10. Thank you. Obrigado.
Obrigado. Do we have more remote for now? No? So please, another academia.
Hello, I'm Luiz Carpino from University of Ribeirão Preto and Instituto Universitário Sofia Litterly. I'm speaking Portuguese. Pensando nas possibilidades...
Well, when I was considering the possibilities after this meeting, NETmundial+10, considering the academia, I think that's very important to encourage lines of funding that so that the research can be done independently. So also I thought about best practices considering this governance model that's being discussed here. Obviously focusing in the global south, always also considering or enabling the equality of human rights and also democratic values. And I understand that this is a very sensitive issue, but it's important that we also act on this issue. So funding of research is very important for achieving that. Thank you very much.
David, go ahead.
Yes, David Green from EFF on behalf of Civil Society. Just adding on to Henriette's previous statement, not only would it be productive to have other multi-stakeholder processes employ the principles that come out of this, but actually to call on them to affirmatively endorse the principles ahead of time and pledge to employ them. I think that could be an action item that this body could take, would be to reach out and to call for positive endorsements from other multi-stakeholder processes to employ these principles.
Thank you, David. And now another from academia, please.
Boa tarde. Alexandre Gonzalez do
Good afternoon, Alexander Gonzalez from the University of Brasilia. I'll speak in Portuguese. Well, I'd like to insist on an issue. It's important that the final document refers to the global internet governance. Today, we see asymmetry and inequality of power because this is now on the hands of some companies and some organizations. To me, this is just as important as the statement by NETmundial+10 that talked about arbitrary surveillance by some stakeholders within the governance structure, and that threatened the integrity and also the build of trust. So if the current statement does not portray such reality, I'm talking about the concentration of power and also of decision-making processes. So it will also not be that, make that much sense.
Thank you. Paloma Lara Castro, representing Derechos Digitales. Just to follow up on David's point, we would like to suggest to encourage the establishment of working groups that analyze how to implement the NETmundial principles on multi-stakeholder approach to ongoing and future processes at the global, regional, and local levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Technical community.
Muito obrigada pela palavra. Agora,
Thank you very much. I am going now to speak on behalf of the technical committee, but the Brazilian and the Global South technical community, and this is why I'm going to speak Portuguese. I would like to emphasize the need to talk about the right to be disconnected, the right that people have of not necessarily being integrated as part of the digitalization of the world, and also the right of not being part of internet. So creating networks that are affecting our culture, for example, and the constant use of internet. Let me give you an example. Rather than having someone not having access of internet, maybe the person should have the right of not being forced only to use digital means, for example, to have only digital documents, only it's the only way is to have a digital life. My country has been through a internet digital transformation. Now we have more than 80% of connections in Brazil, and this is a change that is going to be part of most of the countries in the Global South. So I think that we have to look ahead towards the future. We have to create networks, platforms, and connections and government that would also allow users to be disconnected should they want to be disconnected. And this is also a right of internet users. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll speak in Portuguese. Meu nome é Flora.
My name is Flora, and I'm here representing the Giants in Brazil. And I would like to make a point, just echoing what we've just heard. Multi-stakeholder model has also to be applied. And sometimes we have to say obvious things, but the multi-stakeholder model has to be also applied to local and national forum in what concerns internet governance in all different countries. We know the importance of having international forum, and we are all part of that, and NETmundial+10 is extremely important towards that. But a multi-stakeholder model should not be limited to IGF or to the large international forums for internet governance. It's important to have a multi-stakeholder process also applicable at the local level and regional level, really attracting the attention to the large players, the large actors operating all over, such as big techs, for example. They also have to make a commitment to follow the principles of NETmundial+10 and the multi-stakeholder process of applying transparency, of sharing information as part of all the processes at local and national levels, especially the Global South.
So please go ahead.
We have a remote participant from the academic sector. Diana Montenegro, you may join us.
Good morning. Diana Montenegro, Academia, Bogota, Colombia. The implementation is about to encourage critical thinking about novel regulation of this novel digital organization that we are seeing. The Global South must to be the dissensus of a new economic order about inequality, about the lack of recognition of human workers in the Global South. We need to start improving this critical thinking in the universities. We are starting to teaching, for instance, digital regulation in seminaries and in classes. It is important to encourage the autonomy of the regulations in this novel digital organization. Thank you.
Thank you, gracias. So academia again, please.
Hello, thank you. Jaqueline Pigato from São Paulo State University. I would like to build upon the civil society comments from Bertrand and others before me that we have a transnational governance for internet and digital issues with an international system. And a point that unfortunately we have very few participants from government here today. My question in general is regarding what are the incentives to bring all stakeholders to the dialogue, especially governments and the big techs from private sector. Therefore, I would like to, the NETmundial+10 documents recommends the implementation of these guidelines, especially to international institutions, where we have member states seeking to address something, but at the same time, they have an opportunity to build multi-stakeholder processes following these guidelines discussed here. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more people, but we still have online. Please go ahead.
We have a comment from Kiki Fong Lim from Civil Society. Having strong offline experiences for public and civic services accesses, banking, health, etc., benefits people who wish not to be online and increases resilience and recovery in cyber incidents, attack, or natural disaster. It's a win-win. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here on or online? So if not, we were also requested as moderators to do a very unfair task that is trying to summarize a rich discussion. So, of course, we have no intention, Veridiana and myself, to do a report. This will be done later on. But maybe just a few remarks from our perception. I will start and then Veridiana will complement. So one thing, we had different comments with different sorts of structures in terms of what can be done to improve implementation of the outcomes. Some of the comments were related to a sort of an enabling environment that is needed for this implementation. Some people talked about how asymmetries of power can impact this implementation process. Others mentioned how the governance system that currently exists still lacks concrete elements for a new governance of the system. Other people are mentioning that there are several challenges with the multi-stakeholder model, particularly in local implementation. So all those things are related to an enabling environment to guarantee a better implementation process. Then other comments were more on the pragmatic elements of these implementations. So some people mentioned action plans, other that the implementation will be better if we have different tools and including procedures for inclusion. Other mentioned the specific tasks for specific actors and so on. And then thirdly, there were specific comments that are more related to monitoring and evaluation and follow-up. So how we don't need to wait another 10 years. What are the midterm reviews? Which different processes can be used to keep monitoring and seeing how the outcomes that are being negotiated here will be implemented in the next months and years. And finally, on my notes, and then I pass the ball to you, Veridiana, also some calls for engagement of this implementation process with other initiatives that are going on in the international environment. Veridiana?
Okay, so following on the challenging task of making notes and then reporting on the discussion, we had, starting with highlighting the importance for us to have concrete steps and guidelines on how we'll follow up this process, and also the fact that NETmundial is not as other processes that happen regularly or annually. So the importance also not for us to wait more 10 years to, or the Brazilian government to reconvene NETmundial in 10 years more to be able to follow up on the guidelines in the document and the outcome document. So in this sense, we had concrete recommendations and suggestions on that. For example, to have a call on the CGI.br and the high-level committee to convene an open forum at the 2024 IGF to share the experience and outcomes of the document, and also to have a dynamic coalition to follow up an implementation of NETmundial principles and guidelines. We also had the comments on the idea of creating working groups to analyze how to implement NETmundial principles on multi-stakeholder approach to ongoing and future processes at the global, regional, and local levels. We also had the idea of not only having spaces or bringing the principles and guidelines to the processes that exist, but also having an action for these mechanisms that exist to endorse NETmundial principles and an outcome document, as also to appropriate these principles as part of their procedure. We also had the important discussion on what is, as part of the discussion that we are having here, what are the institutions that we have, that we want to have at the end of 2025, for us to be able to have a transactional infrastructure or fully functional architecture that deals with the transnational nature of internet, and also the challenge to creating spaces that where we do have the stakeholders that make decisions in the room, so government, and also a concern with the asymmetries of power and the role that big tech corporations play also in governing our internet today. Both the outcome document reflecting this concern, but also how do we build guidelines, processes, and methods that can that can foster these players' engagement in multi-stakeholder processes. There is also the concern that these guidelines and the outcome document are not only a reference for global processes, but also national processes, both within governments and how big tech platforms deal with the way that they organize their platforms. Let's see, what else do I have here? So I think that's it, what I could gather in as part of the discussion, and we also for sure have the rapporteurs working on this session to be able to complement what we probably missed.
So thank you, Veridiana. Pleasure to co-moderate with you this session. Thank you for all those who contributed here in São Paulo or online. So I guess we have lunch now, right? So, merci, thank you, gracias, obrigado, and bon appétit.
Thank you very much to the speakers. Yes, we're going now for lunch, which will happen at Complex 17, the same place as yesterday. I kindly ask you to keep your belongings with you all the time, okay? If you, for instance, find the cases that were delivered in the entrance, please return them to the reception, okay? And, all right, I guess that's it. Lunch will be served at 1:30 p.m. and we'll be back here at 3 p.m., okay? We ask you to be sharp so that we can keep our agenda on time. Thank you very much.